I found her just before the fog swallowed the trees, my daughter's body half hidden in wet leaves, breathing so faintly it sounded like the forest itself was exhaling for her. And in that moment, kneeling in the cold dirt with blood on my hands, I understood one terrible truth. Whatever had been done to her wasn't finished yet. The woods were silent in that way only October knows, too quiet, like something was listening. My knees sank into the damp earth as I leaned closer, afraid that if I moved too fast, the sound of her breath might stop altogether. My heart hammered so loudly in my ears that I barely heard my own voice when I whispered her name. Olivia, baby, I'm here. Her eyelashes fluttered. One eye didn't open at all. The other stared through me, unfocused, as if she were already halfway somewhere I couldn't follow. I pressed my scarf against the gash on her forehead, my hands trembling despite 30 years of medical training. Nurses aren't supposed to panic. Mothers do. I didn't know yet who had done this. I didn't know why. I only knew one thing with absolute clarity. If I made the wrong choice tonight, my daughter would die. And the truth with her. The siren came later, much later, but the decision had already begun forming long before I heard it. Earlier that evening, I had been thinking about apples. The last ones of the season sat heavy in the trunk of my car, their sweet, sharp scent filling the cabin as I drove home from the farmer's market. October had turned mean overnight. Cold seeped through the seams of my jacket, crawled down my spine, and made my fingers ache on the steering wheel. The road was mud and memory, every rut familiar, every bend known by heart. I'd driven it for decades, back when my husband was still alive, back when my daughter rode in the passenger seat singing off-key to the radio. Life had become quieter since then, smaller, predictable. I was Ruby Vance, widow, retired nurse, the woman who baked too many pies and pretended not to notice the looks people gave her in town. At 56, my hair was still stubbornly black, my skin darker than most in this county, my eyes sharp enough that strangers often looked away first. People whispered things when they thought I couldn't hear. Bad blood. Sometimes they said it like a warning, sometimes like a compliment. They weren't wrong. My grandmother had been a black woman who loved fiercely and married a white man in a time when love like that was considered an act of war. That story lived in our family like scripture, proof that survival itself could be defiance. Sausage. I carried that legacy quietly. I didn't fight. I didn't shout. I endured. That night, I thought I was just going home to make jam. Then my phone rang. The sound sliced through the car like a blade. An unfamiliar number. I almost ignored it. Cell service was unreliable out here, but something in my chest tightened before I could think. "Hello," I said. "Ruby Vance?" The man's voice was strained, breathless. "You need to come right now. The woods behind the old quarry. I found your daughter." The world tilted. I remember pressing the brakes so hard the car skidded, mud spraying up the side A's. My apples rolled in the trunk. I couldn't feel my hands. "My daughter?" I said. "What happened to her?" "She's alive," he said quickly. "But barely. She's been beaten bad. I called for help, but they're far out. You need to hurry." The quarry, 7 miles north. No lights, no houses. I turned the car around without thinking, tires fishtailing as I hit the logging road. Fear sharpened my thoughts instead of clouding them. That scared me more than the call itself. I knew this feeling, the calm before action, the same calm I'd felt during night shifts when patients crashed and everyone else froze. As the trees closed in, another thought crept in, unwanted but persistent. Olivia hadn't called me in weeks. She never said she was unhappy. She never said she was afraid. She lived in a mansion now, married to a man with money and a last name people respected. She said she was fine. But mothers learn to hear what isn't said. And as my headlights cut through the dark and the road narrowed into nothing but shadows and wet leaves, a chilling certainty settled deep in my bones. Whatever I was about to find in those woods had been coming for a long time. And when I reached her, broken and bleeding beneath the trees, I realized this wasn't just the moment everything fell apart. It was the moment I would have to remember exactly who I came from. Because the forest wasn't the most dangerous thing waiting for us that night. I didn't wait for the sirens anymore. My hands were numb, but my mind was alive with every instinct I had ever learned in 3 decades of nursing, in 36 years of being a mother, in a lifetime of surviving. I didn't just carry my daughter up the slick mud path. I carried her fear, her secrets, her pain. Every step forward was a prayer. Every breath she drew was a victory. By the time I got to the road, the forest seemed to exhale around us, as though it knew its prey had escaped, at least for now. I lowered her gently into the passenger seat of the Chevy, tucking her matted hair behind my ear and glancing at her face through the dim light of the dashboard. The bruises were already darkening, an angry purple that made my stomach twist. My chest ached, but I ignored it. There was no room for hesitation. Not tonight. "Mom?" she whispered, her voice barely audible. She he knows." I froze. My fingers gripped the steering wheel tighter. My mind raced. Who knows what? Who did this? But I didn't ask yet. Not now. She needed to rest. She needed me steady. I could pry out the truth later. The road home was empty, slick with rain and the decay of fallen leaves. Shadows of trees stretched across the pavement like dark fingers, reaching for us. My mind darted back to the weeks she hadn't called. The vague excuses, the half-smiles she had forced at family gatherings, the golden mansion, the polite dinners, the invisible walls she had built between herself and us. I had sensed it, and yet nothing had prepared me for this. "You're safe now," I whispered, more to myself than to her. "We're almost home. You'll be okay." Her hand found mine, gripping it weakly, and I felt a spark of resolve ignite in my chest. I realized that tonight would not be the night we broke. No, tonight was the night we remembered who we were, and whose blood ran through our veins. The house came into view, dark and silent against the... I stayed by her side through the night, watching her chest rise and fall, listening to every shallow breath. The fire crackled low, casting flickering shadows across the room. Every shadow seemed to carry a warning, every silence the echo of danger. I couldn't stop replaying her words. "Lucille, my dirty blood." The sting of betrayal cut deeper than the bruises I could see on her skin. I fetched the first aid kit I had kept hidden under the sink. My hands shook, but I worked methodically. Antiseptic on her cuts, a gentle touch on the swelling under her eye, a splint for her arm. Pain racked her face, but she didn't cry. Not yet. That was my daughter, unyielding, even in the face of brutality. "Mom," she whispered, her voice fragile. I found documents, files, evidence." I froze. Her words were soft, but they landed like stones in my chest. Evidence. That explained everything, the subtle hints, the evasive answers, the tension in her voice when she called. She hadn't just stumbled into trouble. She had seen something she wasn't supposed to see. "What kind of evidence?" I asked gently, trying not to alarm her, though my pulse was racing. She coughed, groaning as she shifted on the sofa. "Financial, the foundation, millions missing. Transfers, shell companies, offshore accounts." "Oh!" Her eyes darted toward the window, as if the shadows outside might hear her. I didn't know who else to trust. I thought, maybe, I could handle it myself." Her confession twisted my stomach into knots. She had put herself in danger. A woman beaten by her mother-in-law and a web of corruption she could barely untangle alone. My mind flashed to Lucille Sterling, polished, respected in the city, every handshake and smile a lie. How many people would follow her orders? How many would close their eyes to violence? I swallowed hard. My motherly instinct wanted to protect, to flee, to shield. My nurse's instinct wanted to call the authorities, to seek medical help. But logic and fear collided. If Olivia went to the hospital, if the wrong person arrived first, she could be silenced forever. We sat in silence, punctuated only by the soft pop of the fire. The room smelled of old wood, faint smoke, antiseptic, and fear. I could feel the weight of my grandmother's lessons pressing down on me. Strength isn't just surviving, it's knowing when to act, when to quit, when to deceive, to protect the ones you love. "Mom," Olivia said again, her voice firmer now. I I photographed the documents on my phone before I left the office. Before she before she shivered, hiding her face against my shoulder. I thought, maybe you could help. You always know what to do. Phew. Her trust ignited something fierce in me. I remembered the countless nights my grandmother had teaching my brother and me how to see the invisible, how to anticipate danger, how to act when everyone else panicked. I had thought those lessons belonged to another era, a life long gone. But now, they were the only tools between Olivia and a woman who could destroy her with a whisper. I retrieved her phone from her bag, careful not to jostle her injured arm. The screen lit up, revealing dozens of photos of accounting reports, contracts, and payment orders. At first glance, they seemed mundane. Numbers and names, figures and signatures, but I knew better. Something about them felt like a trap waiting to spring, a pattern only visible to someone who knew where to look. You saw this, didn't you? I asked quietly. She nodded, teeth clenched. By accident. I was supposed to compile the annual report. Gavin. He never checks, just signs whatever she wants. But I noticed something. Big transfers, companies that didn't exist, offshore accounts. I tried to tell myself it was legal, but her hand trembled on mine. I knew she would kill me if she thought I knew too much. The fire sputtered, sending a streak of light across her tear-streaked face. I held her hand, pressing my thumb into hers, sending a silent promise that we would survive this together. I could feel her shaking. Not just from pain, but from the weight of knowing too much. The shadows outside seemed to stretch closer, pressing against the window, reminding me that Lucille Sterling's influence extended far beyond her polished smile and glittering city presence. We had evidence, we had knowledge, but we were vulnerable, terribly vulnerable. And in that moment, a thought settled like ice in my veins. They would come for her again. Soon. And this time, I couldn't wait for fate to decide who lived or died. I leaned close to her ear. We will protect this, Olivia. I will not let them take you. We will be ready. Her eyes met mine, wet but resolute, and I saw in them a spark of the daughter I had raised. The stubborn, brave, unyielding girl who had refused to break even in the face of fear. But the danger was already closing in. And I knew, with a certainty that made my heart pound like a drum, that tonight was only the beginning, because someone powerful had already decided we were the enemy. The night outside thickened, a cold October darkness pressing against the windows. I had never felt the house so quiet, so vulnerable. Olivia rested on the sofa, her eyes half closed, but I could see the tension in the tight set of her jaw, the way her fingers clenched the blanket. She was alive, but barely. And I knew instinctively that being alive didn't mean being safe. Not yet. I needed help, not anyone. Not just a stranger who might sympathize. I needed someone who understood survival, someone who could move in the shadows as easily as walking in the sunlight. I needed Marcus, my older brother, ex-military, a man of few words, but with eyes that missed nothing and a mind that anticipated danger before it even arrived. I hadn't called him in years, life had pulled us apart. But tonight, I needed him more than I had ever needed anyone. I found my phone, hesitated for a fraction of a second, then typed a single message. Marcus, need your help. Grandpa's lessons now. I hit send and immediately turned off the phone, hiding it in the drawer. Olivia's gaze followed me. You're turning it off? She asked weakly, suspicion in her eyes. They can track it, I said, voice low but firm. They know where you live. If anyone is watching, we can't let them find us before Marcus arrives. He'll handle the rest. She nodded silently, trusting me despite the pain, despite the fear. That trust fueled something fierce in my chest. Then I heard it, the softest creak from the front porch, almost drowned by the wind, but unmistakable. My pulse leapt. Shadows played across the walls as I strained to see. Every instinct screamed danger, but I remained still. The sound didn't repeat. Whoever it was, they had left or were waiting. I returned to Olivia, checking her arm again. The fracture was stable, but any wrong movement could worsen it. Her bruised eye looked back at me, swollen and dark, but alive. She forced a weak smile. Mom, what now? I swallowed, knowing the answer. Now we wait, I said. The waiting never felt passive. It was preparation, observation, planning, survival. Hours passed. The wind outside howled through the trees, rattling the windows. My mind raced through every possibility. Lucille Sterling's influence wasn't limited to the city. She had connections everywhere: police, hospitals, accountants. She was respected, polished, untouchable in the public eye. And yet, she had underestimated my family, my blood, my training. My grandfather's lessons had skipped a generation, but they hadn't vanished. The sound of an engine broke the silence. A vehicle moving deliberately across the old dirt road. My stomach sank, then steadied, as the headlights cut through the darkness. The shape of a rugged SUV emerged. And in it, Marcus. I opened the door before the car had even stopped, rushing to meet him halfway. His presence was like armor. Tall, broad-shouldered, sharp-eyed. The kind of man who never wasted words, yet every word he spoke carried weight. He had been waiting for this moment. He always had that way of seeing threats before anyone else even noticed them. Ruby, he said, voice calm, but carrying the authority of command. Show me. I guided him to Olivia, explaining quietly, carefully, her condition, the documents, the phone, Lucille Sterling's reach. Marcus's eyes never wavered. He nodded, absorbing everything without interruption, like a hawk sizing up prey and predator alike. Hospital? I asked cautiously. He shook his head. Too risky. She goes there. They could intercept her. Or worse. His jaw tightened. We keep her here, can detain the damage, prepare a plan. Relief and fear collided in me. Marcus's calm reassured me, but it also reminded me how dangerous this situation was. We weren't just protecting Olivia from one woman anymore. We were protecting her from a network of power, money, and influence, and one wrong move could be fatal. He crouched beside her, studying the bruises and splint. His hand brushed hers lightly. You're safe for now, he said, firm but soft. We'll get through this, but you'll need to trust me, and your mother. Olivia nodded, tears spilling down her face, but determination flickering behind them. And I realized something profound. My daughter's survival wasn't just about her body. It was about her courage, her resolve, and the strength she inherited from generations of Vance women who had refused to be broken. Marcus turned to me, his gaze sharp. Time to teach them we're not prey. Time to show them the lessons of Nick Vance aren't forgotten. And as the wind rattled the windows again, I felt the first real spark of hope ignite. Not just hope that Olivia would survive, but hope that justice, in its own way, could be reclaimed. But I also knew deep down that Lucille Sterling would not wait. And when she made her move, the storm would be far worse than any of us had yet imagined. Marcus stayed silent as I handed Olivia her phone, her trembling fingers fumbling with the cracked leather case. Every click, every swipe, felt like a countdown. She winced as she opened the folder, the soft glow of the screen illuminating her bruised face. I could see the worry etched deeper than the wounds on her skin. She knew just how dangerous this proof was. Here it is, she whispered, her voice barely audible over the crackle of the fire. The Hope Foundation. My husband's mother. She's stealing. I knelt beside her, peering over her shoulder at the images. At first glance, they were numbers, figures, contracts, all boring, mundane business documents. But as Marcus leaned closer, his eyes narrowed, reading what only a trained mind could decipher. Large transfers, tens of millions, moving to companies that didn't exist. Offshore accounts that had no legitimate owner. Patterns that didn't just scream corruption, they shouted it. She's laundering money, Marcus said softly, the words heavy in the room. And she's good at it. Very good. Invisible layers, shell companies, straw men. No trace for amateurs to follow. Olivia swallowed hard. I only discovered it because Gavin asked me to help with the annual report. I didn't even mean to. I thought it was normal. But the more I looked, the more I realized she's been siphoning millions every year. Sick kids, hospitals, playgrounds, all a cover. I felt my stomach twist. Rage, fear, disbelief, all collided into one tight knot. My mind flashed to my daughter's beaten body in the woods. This is why. The brutality, the warning, the lengths Lucille Sterling would go to silence anyone who threatened her empire. Marcus ran a hand over his face. They're dangerous, and they'll come for her again. Soon. I shivered, thinking of all the times Olivia had smiled politely in that mansion, unaware that every handshake, every polite nod, might have been masking contempt. Or worse, calculation. We can't go to the police. Not yet, I said. Hospital's risky too, if they know she's here. Marcus nodded. We contain this. Keep her hidden. Treat the injuries. And plant. That's the only way she survives. Olivia's hand shook as she pointed to a series of screenshots on the phone. Look, transfers from the foundation, 5 to 15 million at a time, going to Consulting Inc., Business Analytics, Legal Solutions, companies that don't exist, all registered in the last month before the transfer, all offshore. And the invoices? They're fake, no services rendered, nothing. My blood ran cold. A woman who could orchestrate this kind of scheme could also orchestrate murder. The thought clawed at my chest, unrelenting. And yet, I also felt a strange surge of determination. This wasn't just about surviving. This was about justice. About stopping someone who had built her empire. Park John lies and cruelty. Marcus's gaze shifted to Olivia. You need to remember every detail, dates, transfers, emails, conversations, anything. Even a small mistake could cost you your life. Olivia nodded. Irresolute. I thought if I could just get proof, I could expose it. But I wasn't ready for her to find out. I knew. She came after me. She nearly killed me. I held her hand, pressing my thumb against hers. You survive, I said firmly. And you're not alone. We're going to make sure of that. Marcus's eyes hardened. We move carefully. We strike only when the time is right. But first, we protect her. She's our shield and our leverage, and we'll need every advantage Grandpa taught us to make it through this. I realized then that our family's legacy wasn't just about survival. It was about knowing when to fight, when to hide, and when to use every lesson, every skill, every ounce of cunning to protect the ones we loved. The fight wasn't over. It had only just begun. Olivia's phone buzzed again. I froze, heart racing. Every notification, every sound could be a tracker, a warning, a threat. I took a deep breath and reminded myself that fear would not dictate our actions. Strategy would. Patience would. Family would. The fire crackled, shadows dancing across the walls, and I understood. The world outside could be deadly, but the danger inside our home, the real danger, was even closer than we had imagined. And in that quiet moment, I knew one terrifying truth. Lucille Sterling wouldn't stop until she either silenced us or destroyed everything we loved. The house had never felt so small or so vulnerable. Every creak of the floorboards, every whisper of wind against the old wooden windows made me flinch. Marcus moved with quiet precision, scanning the rooms, assessing the exits, calculating risks in ways only a man trained for war could. I followed him with Olivia, slung carefully across my oars, her head resting against my shoulder. Each step was measured, deliberate, our breaths held tight. We need to clear the house of trackers first, Marcus said, crouching near the living room. His eyes, sharp and calculating, scanned under tables, behind the fireplace, even inside the vent covers. Lucille Sterling doesn't play fair. They've probably planted something in the car, too. I nodded, my stomach nodding at the thought. The SUV, the driveway, even the GPS in my phone, everything could betray us. I handed Olivia's phone to Marcus, the cracked case reflecting the firelight. I took the battery out already, I said. We'll leave it off until it's safe. Marcus opened the device with a practiced hand. Within seconds, he located a small, almost invisible black box. Tracker, he said flatly. Professional grade. Not cheap. Could track movement, intercept calls, or even monitor audio. He flicked it into a cloth, wrapping it tightly. We'll dismantle this later. For now, it stays hidden. Olivia watched silently, her hand clutching mine. I felt her trembling. Mom! Marcus! What if she comes here? What if she finds me? I pressed a kiss to her forehead. She won't. Not while we're here. Not tonight. But inside, a cold knot of fear tightened. Marcus had fought wars, faced men who would kill without hesitation, but this was different. This was family, and Lucille Sterling's reach was more insidious than any battlefield. We moved to the Chevy parked behind the house. Marcus worked quickly, removing another tracker beneath the driver's seat, his fingers steady despite the tension in the air. They've been watching you for months, he muttered. Gavin probably has no idea. But she does, and she knows every routine, every habit. We need to change everything. I helped Olivia inside the house, settling her in a corner room that had once been a guest bedroom. I laid blankets over her, adjusting pillows, keeping her arm steady. The fire's glow illuminated her face, pale and battered, yet fierce in its own fragile way. She was exhausted, but she was still herself, the girl who refused to bend, even when the world tried to crush her. Marcus crouched beside me, voice low. We have two priorities. 1, keep her hidden. 2, preserve the evidence. And when the time comes, we strike strategically. She can't anticipate us if we stay invisible. I nodded, feeling the weight of her responsibility pass. Fivers thigh my shoulders like armor. And the documents, the proof? We safeguard it, Marcus said. He produced a small tamper-proof USB drive. We move copies here, encrypt everything. Only when we have the advantage will we expose them. Olivia stirred, wincing in pain. Mom, Marcus, I don't want anyone else hurt because of me. Her words struck me like a blow. I brushed her hair back, smoothing the damp strands from her forehead. Sweetheart, you didn't ask for this. You didn't cause this. You survived. That's what matters. And now, we fight smart. Together. Marcus stood, pacing silently by the window. We'll need safe routes, alternate escape paths, surveillance cameras. Anyone coming will be spotted before they get close. We'll turn the tables on her, but it has to be precise. No mistakes. I looked at my daughter, at Marcus, at the fire flickering between us. For the first time since I found her in the woods, a sense of control surfaced, a fragile, dangerous hope that we could navigate this darkness without losing each other. But then I heard it, a soft snap from the yard, like a branch breaking under cautious feet. My heart skipped. Marcus was already at the window, eyes scanning, muscles tensed. Olivia's hand gripped mine tighter, her breath shallow. Nothing. Or maybe someone was already watching. I felt a chill crawl down my spine. This wasn't just hiding, this was war, and the first battle had only just begun. Because somewhere out there, Lucille Sterling knew we had the proof. The night felt impossibly long. Every sound, the creak of a floorboard, the wind brushing against the window pane, the distant howl of an owl, made my heart thud like a drum. I sat beside Olivia, who had finally dozed off for a brief moment, her bruised face pale in the firelight. Marcus was on watch by the window, motionless, his eyes scanning the shadows beyond the property line like a hawk. I had always thought of our small wooden house as a sanctuary. Now, it felt like a fragile cage, each plank a flimsy barrier against a predator I couldn't see but knew was out there. Lucille Sterling wasn't a woman who relied on brute force alone. She was subtle, patient, relentless. Every decision calculated, every smile a mask for her venomous intentions. The phone buzzed on the table, a single notification on a device we thought was off. I froze. My hand shot to my chest. Marcus moved before I could even speak, snatching the phone and examining it. No signal, no tracking. But someone tried. His jaw tightened. They're testing us, probing for weaknesses. They're already inside our perimeter. Olivia stirred, her hand brushing my arm. Mom, what do we do? Her voice was a whisper, trembling with exhaustion and fear. We wait, I said firmly, though my own pulse raced. We observe, and when they make a move, we control it. We're ready. Hours stretched like eternity. I paced the room silently, every muscle tense. Marcus moved like a shadow, checking doors, windows, even the chimney flue. Every step, every glance was strategic. I realized that my home, once a place of warmth and familiarity, had transformed into a fortress. Our lives suspended in a delicate balance between vigilance and fear. Then I heard it. A distant engine, quiet but deliberate. Moving along the dirt road, Marcus's hand dropped to the sidearm at his hip, his eyes narrowing. They're testing our nerves. They'll try something direct soon. Watch for signs of forced entry. And Ruby. His voice was low but carried iron resolve. Keep her safe at all costs. I nodded, gripping Olivia's hand. The weight of responsibility pressed down on me, but beneath it burned a strange exhilaration. We weren't helpless. We had knowledge in Sisi. We had skill, and most importantly, we had each other. Minutes felt like hours. Then the first shadow moved across the yard. A figure, careful, measured, testing the boundaries. Marcus didn't hesitate. He slipped silently outside, disappearing into the darkness, leaving me with Olivia. My stomach knotted with fear. Every second without sight of him felt like an eternity. But I trusted him completely. I watched the firelight flicker across Olivia's face, imagining her in the woods, fragile and alone. I had found her then, and I would protect her now. Every ounce of training, every instinct honed over decades, screamed at me to stay calm, stay focused. From the corner of my eye, I saw movement outside the window. Someone crouched near the perimeter, assessing, waiting. Marcus's silhouette appeared suddenly beside the figure. The stranger froze, caught off guard. A harsh whisper, and the shadow retreated, melting back into the night. I exhaled, though my chest still burned. The first strike had been made, and we had survived it. But survival didn't mean safety. Not yet. Marcus returned to the room, his expression unreadable, but his presence commanding. "They know we're aware," he said, voice quiet. "That means the next attempt will be bolder. Lucille doesn't hesitate. If she thinks we're vulnerable, she will come directly. We need contingency plans, escape routes, allies. And we need them fast." I glanced at Olivia, still ill, trembling, her bruised arm pressed to her chest. "We can't leave her alone," I said. "We have to prepare her too, mentally. She has to be strong if we're going to survive this." Marcus nodded. "Strength comes from knowledge and strategy. And courage. She already has courage. We'll build the rest." The fire crackled again, shadows dancing across the walls. Outside, the night held its breath. Somewhere in the distance, Lucille Sterling watched, calculating, planning, patient as a predator. And I realized with a cold certainty, this wasn't just a fight for proof, for justice, for survival. It was a fight for the very soul of my daughter, and the blood that ran through her veins. Because the next strike would not be subtle. The next strike would test everything we had prepared, and the world would finally see the depths of Lucille Sterling's darkness. The night seemed to stretch endlessly, the darkness outside the windows pressing against the walls like a living thing. I stayed by Olivia, my hands never leaving hers, feeling the faint tremor of fear that ran through her body. Marcus had taken his position by the back door, silently scanning every shadow beyond the yard. The house felt like it was holding its breath, waiting for the inevitable. And then it came, the first real strike. A faint click near the front entrance made my stomach drop. Someone was inside. My heart pounded in my ears as Marcus's hand went to the doorknob, his movements deliberate, controlled, lethal if necessary. I whispered to Olivia, "Stay down. Don't move, no matter what you hear." Her wide eyes met mine, filled with terror and trust. "So?" She nodded, burying her face in the blanket. I clenched her hand, willing her to stay calm, even as every instinct in me screamed to protect, to attack, to do anything to stop whoever had crossed this threshold. Marcus slipped through the shadows, silent as a ghost, while I followed closely behind, keeping one hand on Olivia. The intruder moved cautiously, deliberate, someone trained, someone who knew exactly how to bypass ordinary defenses. My pulse raced. Whoever it was, it just had Lucille Sterling's precision. Then I saw her, standing in the doorway, her posture flawless, her expression composed, but her eyes cold and calculating. Lucille Sterling herself. Time froze. The room, the fire, the shadows, all seemed to collapse into a single, unbearable moment. "You've been very clever, Ruby," she said, voice smooth, controlled, dripping with disdain. "Hiding, watching, plotting. I almost admire it." Almost. I pressed Olivia closer to me, feeling her weak body against mine. Rage surged, white-hot and blinding. How dare she enter my home, threaten my daughter, flaunt about her power like a queen in a court of fear. Marcus stepped from the shadows, silent and lethal, his eyes locked on Lucille. "Step outside," he said quietly, but with an authority that brooked no refusal. Lucille's smile didn't falter. "I think not. I've come for my granddaughter's inheritance, and to remind you all of your place." My stomach dropped. She knew about the pregnancy, about the baby. My fingers dug into Olivia's hand, and I felt her stiffen, a mixture of fear and defiance. "You'll regret this," I said, voice trembling, but trying to project every ounce of strength I could muster. "We're not afraid of you." Her laugh was low, dangerous. Echo na keep imani bain ini off the walls. "Oh, Ruby, you should be." She stepped closer, every movement precise, a predator enjoying the control. "You see, the world isn't kind to people with dirty blood. And you, my dear daughter-in-law, have trespassed too far." Marcus shifted, subtly positioning himself between us and her. "You leave now. Walk away. This isn't a negotiation, it's a warning." Lucille's eyes flicked to Olivia, then back to me. Her gaze was sharp, like a knife slicing through every attempt at courage I had built. "Warnings are meaningless to you," she said, "and I have no patience for your family's sentimentality. I take what I want, and right now, that's her." Olivia's breath hitched. I tightened my hold, every nerve in my body screaming. I remembered Grandpa Nick's lessons. "Ruby, see the invisible. Hear what isn't spoken. Protect the ones you love, even if the world thinks you're powerless." I realized then that power wasn't about wealth or titles or fear. It was about will, strategy, and courage in the face of monsters. Lucille Sterling had wealth. She had influence, but she hadn't counted on Marcus. She hadn't counted on the blood that ran through Olivia's veins, or the mother who would burn the world down to protect her child. Lucille's smile faltered for the briefest second, almost imperceptible, but it was enough to see the crack in her perfection. And I knew, deep in my bones, that the next few moments would decide everything. Because the predator had stepped into our lair, and we were no longer prey. The room seemed smaller now, every corner a potential threat, every shadow a hiding place. Lucille Sterling's presence filled the house like a storm, cold and relentless, her eyes scanning us with calculating precision. My pulse pounded so hard I thought she could hear it. Olivia pressed against me, trembling but defiant, her eyes wide, a mixture of fear and determination I had seen only once before. In the hospital, when I first saved her life, Marcus didn't move, didn't speak. His body was coiled like a spring, every muscle ready, his eyes never leaving Lucille. The silence stretched, thick and suffocating, until it was broken by the softest click, the unmistakable sound of a concealed weapon being drawn. Lucille's smile widened, thin and cruel. "I admire your loyalty, Ruby, but loyalty doesn't change reality. You can protect her all you want, but this ends tonight." I swallowed hard, trying to steady my shaking hands. "We won't let you take her. Not now. Not ever." My voice cracked, but the words carried more than fear. They carried the unyielding force of a mother who had stared death in the face and refused to blink. Lucille laughed, a sound devoid of warmth. "You're brave, foolishly brave, but bravery isn't enough." She took a step forward. Her heel clicked against the wooden floor. I could almost see the danger radiating off her. Marcus shifted, subtle but unmistakable, a protective barrier between Olivia and Lucille. "Enough games," he said. His voice was low, steady, and it carried the weight of authority. "Leave. Now. You've tested us, and we've survived your first move. One more step, and you'll regret it. Lucille's eyes flicked to Marcus, sizing him up. Her expression didn't change, but I saw the faintest hint of hesitation. A predator doesn't hesitate, but perhaps she hadn't anticipated someone like Marcus, someone who moved with silent precision, a mind trained for strategy in battle. For a moment, the room held its breath. Then Lucille's hand twitched toward her weapon again. That was all Marcus needed. With the speed of a striking panther, he disarmed her, twisting her wrist and sending the weapon skidding across the floor. Lucille stumbled back, shock flashing in her eyes. I realized then that the fear I had felt, the helplessness, had transformed into something stronger. I could feel it. The fire of determination that had burned in my grandmother, in my father, in me. Lucille Sterling was powerful, yes, but she had underestimated the resolve of a mother protecting her child, the sharpness of a brother trained for war, and the courage of a daughter who had survived violence. Olivia's lips trembled, but she whispered, voice steady despite everything. Mom, Marcus, we can't stop. She'll come back. She'll try again. I nodded, my hands trembling, but my heart steady. We'll be ready. Every move, every breath, every decision will anticipate her, and when the time comes, she won't see us coming. Lucille stared at us, fury mixing with disbelief. You think you've won? She spat. This is only the beginning. You'll see. Power always finds a way. Marcus stepped forward, voice like steel. Not this time. Not against family. Not against us. The fire crackled between us, shadows dancing on the walls, mirroring the storm in my chest. Fear, rage, and determination collided, forming a force that neither money nor influence nor cruelty could break. For the first time, I understood something profound. Courage wasn't the absence of fear. It was acting in spite of it. And as I looked at Olivia, fragile yet unbroken, I knew we had more than courage. We had each other. Lucille's eyes narrowed, and without another word, she retreated, slipping out the door as silently as she had arrived. But I knew this was far from over. She would return, bolder, smarter, more dangerous. Marcus turned to us, voice calm, but carrying the weight of command. She tested us tonight, survived it. That means she'll escalate. Every move she makes now will be calculated. We need to anticipate it. Be ready. I held Olivia close, the warmth of her small body grounding me. We'll be ready, I whispered. We won't let her win. Outside, the wind rattled the windows, carrying the promise of storms yet to come. Inside, a fire burned, not just in the fireplace, but in our hearts. A fire that no predator, no moneyed monster, no tyrant could extinguish. Because the first strike had failed, and the next battle would demand everything we had, and more. The first night of confrontation left the house silent, but the tension was thicker than ever. Every shadow seemed to whisper, every creak of the floorboards, a warning. I stayed beside Olivia, keeping her close, feeling the warmth of her fragile body against mine. Marcus moved like a phantom through the house, checking every lock, every blind spot, every weak point. We can't just wait for her to strike again, Marcus said, his voice low but commanding. We need to take control, gather intel, anticipate her moves, make her vulnerable before she makes us vulnerable. I nodded, my mind racing. Fear and anger had fused into something sharp and strategic. I realized that for too long, Olivia had been cautious, polite, and overly trusting, even in the face of danger. Now, we had a chance to teach her something essential. Courage was only half the battle. The other half was preparation. Olivia sat upright on the sofa, wincing but resolute. Show me, she said, her voice quiet but firm. Show me how to protect myself, how to fight back. I squeezed her hand. Step 1. We understand the enemy. Everything we know about Lucille, we analyze. Every move, every transaction, every habit. Then we use it against her. Strategy is our shield as much as Marcus is. Marcus pulled out the phone and the encrypted USB drives, placing them carefully on the table. These documents aren't just proof, they're leverage. And leverage is power. But we need to be careful. Every step we take, we have to assume she's watching. Olivia's eyes lit up. determination replacing fear. So, we don't just hide, we plan. And when the time is right, we act. Exactly. My aid sensei, Marcus said. We turn the tables. But first, we need to strengthen our position. Cameras, safe routes, decoys. We can't be predictable. I felt a surge of pride and awe at my daughter. The girl who had been beaten, terrified, nearly broken, now had a fire in her eyes that matched mine. It was the same fire that had carried generations of our family through adversity. Over the next few hours, we worked in tense silence. Marcus explained how to spot surveillance, how to identify potential trackers, how to anticipate Lucille's next move. Olivia listened intently, absorbing every word, every detail. I could see the shift, her posture straightening, her gaze sharpening, her fear transforming into quiet determination. Then she paused, pointing to the phone screen. Mom, look at this. Transfers from the foundation. They're not just offshore. Some accounts are tied to companies I've never seen before, locations I can trace. Marcus leaned over, analyzing. Good eye. These are weak links, small companies hastily registered. Some of these addresses are even shared. It's sloppy for someone like her, but brilliant if no one notices. We notice. That's our advantage. I nodded, feeling the weight of responsibility settle heavily on my shoulders. Each transaction, each document, each traceable connection was a weapon in our hands, but also a dangerous target if we misused it. We'll build a map, Marcus said. Connections, transfers, routes, locations. Once we have clarity, we can plan a precise strike. And not just defensively, offensively. We control the pace, the timing, the narrative. She won't see it coming. Olivia looked at me, her bruised face illuminated by the soft glow of the table lamp. Mom, we can do this. We can stop her. I pressed a hand to her cheek, feeling the softness beneath the bruises. Yes, my darling. We will. Together, every step of the way. No more hiding, no more running. We take back control. The fire crackled behind us, shadows dancing on the walls, reflecting the storm of emotions within us. Fear, rage, determination, hope. Outside, the wind whispered through the trees, carrying the faintest echo of threats yet to come. But inside, the three of us were forging something stronger than fear. A plan, a strategy, a bond that no money, power, or cruelty could break. Because for the first time, Lucille Sterling was no longer the hunter. We were learning to become hunters ourselves, and the next move would be ours. The dawn was pale and gray, a thin veil of light brushing against the frost-covered fields outside our windows. But inside the house, the tension was palpable, an almost electric current that kept Marcus on edge and me alert, ready to act at a moment's notice. Olivia sat at the table, bandages in place, bruises hidden beneath layers of clothing, her hands shaking slightly as she scrolled through the encrypted files on her phone. This is it, Marcus said quietly, crouching near the laptop. We've mapped out every connection, every offshore account, every shell company. If we act carefully, we can hit Lucille where it hurts and expose her without leaving a trace for her to retaliate immediately. Olivia's lips pressed together, her jaw tight with determination. Mom, are we really going to do this? I mean, really confront her? I reached out, squeezing her hand. Yes, honey, but not with violence. With strategy. We've survived her attacks before because we were patient, careful, clever. This time, we take the initiative. We control the pace, and we make sure she can't touch you, or anyone else. Marcus nodded. We'll start with a digital strike. Leak a controlled portion of evidence to the right contacts. High-profile journalists, financial watchdogs, government auditors. People who can't be influenced by her wealth. It'll destabilize her, force her to react publicly, and we'll watch every move she makes. Olivia exhaled sharply. It feels dangerous, like walking on a tightrope. I smiled, Thus, the fire of tension in my chest wouldn't let me relax. It is. But every tightrope has a balance pole. Today, our balance is knowledge, preparation, and courage. Marcus prepared the files, encrypting and routing them through multiple secure channels. I watched Olivia as she carefully verified each document, cross-referencing dates, transfers, and account numbers. Every click on her phone, every nod she gave, was a small victory, a reclaiming of power she had never had in her husband's house. By mid-morning, everything was set. Marcus leaned back, a rare smirk tugging at his lips. The trap is ready. Lucille will notice the leak today. She'll scramble, she'll panic, she'll make mistakes. That's when we observe, learn, and plan the next move. Timing is everything. The house fell silent for a few moments. Olivia looked at me, her bruised but determined face illuminated by the pale sunlight. Mom, I feel like I'm finally not just hiding, I'm fighting, and it feels right. I pressed my hand to her cheek, marveling at the strength that had blossomed despite everything she had endured. Yes, baby. You're not just surviving. You're reclaiming your life. And we're doing it together. Then Marcus's phone buzzed. He glanced at it, his expression tightening. She's noticed. Lucille is moving. And she's making a direct approach, sending people to check on the house. It won't be long before she comes herself. My stomach lurched, but my mind was sharp. This was the moment we had been preparing for. The first real test of our counterstrike. Every precaution, every plan, every bit of intelligence mattered now. Olivia stood, leaning on me for support. We can do this! Atle, she whispered. Her voice no longer trembled. Fear was still there, but it had been tempered by resolve. Marcus positioned himself at strategic points around the house. I stayed close to Olivia, guiding her movements, whispering reminders of what to observe, how to remain invisible until the moment was right. Hours passed, the silence thick, punctuated only by the occasional rustle of leaves outside or the distant hum of a vehicle. Then, a car engine, slow, deliberate, testing the perimeter. I felt my heart beat faster. Lucille's reach was close, but we were ready. The first strike had failed, but the first counterstrike, that was ours. And in that tense, frozen moment, I realized something profound. The hunter could be the hunted yet too, because tonight the game would change, and we would no longer be on the defensive. The night had grown heavier, pressing down like a velvet weight against the old wooden house. Outside, the wind whispered through the trees, carrying a chill that made every shadow seem alive. But inside, the atmosphere pulsed with quiet determination. Every heartbeat, every breath, a countdown to the confrontation we had been preparing for. Marcus crouched near the window, scanning the perimeter with the precision of a seasoned soldier. Olivia sat at the table, reviewing the files one last time, her bruised arm wrapped carefully, her face pale but resolute. I moved between them, checking doors, ensuring every exit was secure, and keeping my daughter's eyes on me whenever doubt flickered across her features. Then the first signs came, a ripple across the digital network, subtle but undeniable. Lucille Sterling had noticed the leak. Panic, thinly veiled as control, rippled through her empire. Email alerts, phone calls, sudden account freezes. The first mistakes appeared almost immediately. Marcus's eyes glimmered with quiet triumph. She's scrambling, she's making mistakes, and she won't know where the next strike comes from. Olivia's lips pressed into a thin line. So this is it? We hit her while she's vulnerable. Yes, I said firmly. We've done everything carefully, cautiously. Now it's time to act with precision. But we stay smart. No direct confrontation, unless we have an advantage. Tonight, we're in control. Hours passed like moments. The fire in the fireplace flickered, shadows dancing across the walls, reflecting the tension inside. Every creak, every whisper of wind made us flinch, but the fear was now tempered by readiness. We were no longer prey. We were strategists, defenders, hunters in our own right. Then the phone buzzed, a secure line Marcus had set up. He answered quietly. Yes, I see. Understood. He hung up, eyes sharp. Lucille has sent representatives, investigators she believes she controls, auditors who are in her pocket. They're heading here, but they'll find only what we want them to see. Olivia looked at me, determination blazing through her exhaustion. So we show them the evidence? Marcus shook his head. Not yet. We manipulate. We expose weaknesses. We watch their reactions. Once they're off balance, we deliver the proof in a way that can't be ignored and can't be reversed. I felt a surge of pride, mingled with relief and fear. My daughter, the same girl who had been beaten, who had almost lost hope, was now a strategist, an observer, an essential part of our counterstrike. Courage had transformed into skill, trauma into empowerment, pain into purpose. Outside, the figures arrived. I watched through the blinds as they approached, their confident, controlled movements masking the chaos that had begun to ripple through Lucille's empire. They had no idea the trap that awaited them, no idea that every move they made was being watched, analyzed, anticipated. Marcus's voice was low but firm. Remember, no rash moves. Control the narrative. Protect Olivia at all costs. We're close to tipping the scales. I nodded, pressing a hand to Olivia's shoulder. She met my eyes, a fire there that matched my own. "We're ready," she whispered. The investigators entered, scanning the house, expecting compliance, expecting fear. Instead, they were met with calm, observation, and subtle guidance. Every question we answered, every document we presented, was calculated to destabilize them, to chip away at the control Lucille thought she had. And so subtly, imperceptibly at first, the tide began to turn. Reports came in, missteps became apparent, weak links exposed. Lucille Sterling's empire, a carefully crafted fortress of wealth and influence, was cracking under the weight of its own corruption. I felt a strange calm as the night wore on. Fear was still there, yes, but it was paired with power, with strategy, with the unshakable bond of family standing together. Olivia leaned against me, whispering, "Mom, we did it. We're taking it back." I nodded, tears prickling the corners of my eyes. Not just the wealth, not just the proof, not just the safety, but the dignity, the resilience, the power that had always belonged to us. Outside, the wind softened, the night easing into dawn. Shadows receded, replaced by the pale, hopeful light of morning. And for the first time since that night in the woods, I allowed myself to breathe. Because the first strike had been made. The predator had been exposed. The morning sunlight poured through the windows, soft and golden, illuminating the scars that told our story. Bruises, fatigue, sleepless nights. But also the fire that had carried us through. I looked at Olivia, her arm still wrapped, her face pale but strong, and I realized something profound. Survival had transformed into triumph, and fear had been alchemized into courage. The events in the woods, the terror, the almost loss, the weight of helplessness, finally had clarity. It hadn't been a random act of violence. Lucille Sterling had orchestrated everything. The beatings, the abandonment, the attempt to silence my daughter. But she had underestimated one truth. Blood carries legacy, and legacy carries resilience. Olivia spoke softly, almost reverently. "Mom, I can finally see it. Everything that night, it isn't just cruelty, it was a test of us. And yeah, we passed." I might have nodded, squeezing her hand. It was more than a test. It was a reminder of who we are and who we can be. That night, when you lay there in the cold, barely conscious, I realized we had to claim our power, not just to survive, but to change the story entirely. Marcus appeared in the doorway, quiet but triumphant. The auditors confirmed discrepancies. The media pieces are rolling. Lucille Sterling's empire is unraveling. The moment of reckoning is coming, and it's irreversible. Your strategy worked. I took a deep breath, feeling the tension of months, of nights spent planning, worrying, and fearing the next move, finally begin to release. "So, it's over?" Marcus shook his head gently. "Not completely, but the balance has shifted. You're no longer hunted. You're the hunters now. Every step she takes will be watched, every move countered. And you've taught Olivia what it means to stand without fear." Olivia smiled weakly, tears glinting in her eyes. "I'm not afraid anymore, not like before. And I know I'll never be helpless again." The memories of the woods came flooding back. The rain, the mud, the fear that had clawed at my chest. I saw her face, bloodied and swollen, the fragility that had hidden a fierce spirit. And I realized something. That moment had been a catalyst. It had awakened a yearning we didn't know we had, forcing us to rely not just on skill or strategy, but on the unbreakable bond of family. I turned to Olivia and gently, almost reverently, brushed the hair from her forehead. You were always brave, baby. That night just reminded you, and me, how much power we carry when we refuse to be afraid. Marcus nodded. And now it's time to rebuild. Secure the evidence, protect your family, and let the truth ripple outward. Lucille Sterling's reach is long, but it's finite. Justice, strategy, and courage will reach further. Olivia's hand went to her stomach, a gentle curve over the life growing within her. For this little one, she whispered, they'll never know fear. We'll protect them. I felt a warmth in my chest, a sense of wholeness that had been absent for too long. The fight had been fierce, terrifying, and exhausting, but it had given birth to something stronger than fear. Resilience, empowerment, and the knowledge that we could face anything together. Looking back on the woods, on the fear that had threatened to consume us, I understood at last. That night had been the moment we chose to stand, to reclaim control, to transform trauma into strength and betrayal into clarity. I took a deep breath, feeling the crisp morning air fill my lungs. The sun warmed my skin, and I let the light settle in my bones. For the first time, truly, I felt free. Remember this, my dears, I said softly. To Olivia and the life she carried, to Marcus, to the legacy of our family. No darkness is permanent. No fear is insurmountable. Power belongs to those who refuse to surrender, and courage is the inheritance we pass on to the next generation. The house was quiet, but inside, our hearts roared. We had survived, we had conquered, we had reclaimed everything, and nothing would ever diminish the strength that had been forged in the shadow of fear. And as I looked at my daughter, my granddaughter growing within her, and my brother, I whispered a single, unshakable truth. We rise, always. And nothing, not cruelty, not power, not fear, can ever take that from us. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to our channel. Your support inspires us to create new, exciting stories every single day. Make sure you don't miss our latest video. It's waiting for you right now on the main screen. Wishing you all the best. Stay happy and keep smiling.